Hey everybody, Father Warner here. Today is the 22nd of October, Wednesday in the 29th week in Ordinary Time. And our text today is a continuation of yesterday's Gospel, Luke chapter 12, verse 39 to 48. And today is also, we celebrate the, the great memorial of John Paul II, my favorite Pope, really. Uh, Always, I grew up with him. I remember the day when I celebrated the Mass, the day he died. I realized he would not live through the day. And I remember that morning, I was at St. Paul's Church, Dadar, and I said his name in the Eucharistic prayer, and I choked because I realized it was the last time I would be saying his name at Mass. But he is the great patron of families, and I pray today that he continues through his intercession. We may find peace for our families. Now, coming to the gospel text, which I hope, as I always say, you have read, because the nuances of these texts are beautiful, and a lot gets lost on us. So please read the text. Now, the gospel today is about our ability, it's about our responsibility, and then about our accountability. So ability, responsibility, and about our accountability. And it's going to be this is applicable to the Christian, and as some scholars, and I also tend to think, not that I'm a scholar, I tend to think it's also applicable to the Christian minister. Okay, so yesterday, as we will see, we focused on the word oikonomos, and that in Greek is a steward. It's not a slave. The word is doulos for a slave, and remember, a slave has no rights. But an oikonomos, which yesterday's gospel spoke of you and me, all of us are oikonomos, which really is one who gives service to the Christian community. Now, today the focus is not on an oikonomos, but on a diligent manager. So it's yesterday was about a faithful steward. Today is about a faithful manager. Now, Jesus is presented as one who, and I like this word, examines. Jesus is not going to just, because there's going to be a rush in heaven, uh, he's just going to bypass a lot of us and we're going to skip through the line and skip through his sight. No, he's going to examine every part of us. Not only yesterday he examined the diligence of the oikonomos or the sheep, but today, as I said, he's also going to examine the diligence of the shepherds, which are all church leaders. Now, here's the other thing that you're going to see in this text, which very often the Christian tends to take easy. All have the ability to work for Christ. In fact, we don't have merely an ability, we have a calling, a vocation by virtue of our baptism. So all have an ability, therefore, all have a responsibility, therefore, all have an accountability. You are going to be held accountable. Please understand the seriousness of the gospel. So, all will have responsibility, all will have accountability because all have been given the ability. So, what was going on? St. Luke was addressing a very infant church, yeah, and slowly that infant church, as we saw yesterday, the oikonomos, the stewards, were taking it easy. Why? Because of there was persecution in the church, or maybe there was persecution from within the church, and you begin to say, "This is not my circus. This is not my monkeys. Why do I need to get involved?" And you tend to let it slide. You get the Christian leader very often. I've gone through that. I've said that very often. Not my circus, not my monkeys. I'm not getting involved. But so St. Luke's community was slowly developing a problem. See, it was creating leadership roles, but many of those leaders began to get corrupted in their diligence that was due to God. And we also know that besides that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. We've seen this across the world. It's really, I have a great love and regard for Pope Benedict. I think he should be canonized for the simple fact that his humility to step down was amazing. Quite recently, uh, President Obama, the former president of the United States, says the problem of the world is because it's being run by, uh, the majority of those running the world are above the age of 80. That ability to say, I step down. Yeah, and have you noticed our politicians will never step down because power corrupts and absolute power corrupts? Absolutely. I thank God that the church has a limit, an age limit for bishops. Yeah, and priests. At 75, you have to relinquish power. And even then, I think that should be brought down to 65. Because then they'll be forced to appoint younger bishops. Yeah, and I'm not saying that therefore, many often we think, oh, maturity grows with people. Some people are old and they are never mature. Okay, maturity doesn't grow. You accept responsibility and you grow in maturity. I've seen 13-year-olds and 15-year-olds whose parents have died and they have taken responsibility. They have grown in maturity for the rest of the family. So I think we should perhaps make a case for 65-year-old at retirement for parish priests and retirement for uh, bishops. And I think that's a great act of humility of also saying let a younger person grow in the church. Otherwise we are clinging on. I have sadly seen 75-year-old parish priests who can't move from their bed to the parish office, but they won't give up, and they will misquote John Paul II, whose wonderful feast we celebrate, who said, "If Christ could come down from the cross, so would I resign." And then one of his predecessors resigned. Now, was John Paul wrong in his spirituality? No. But when you see somebody who's completely incapable, and that's why, even may I inform you that the College of Cardinals can be convoked to force a pope to step down if he's of unsound mind. It is possible. It is there within canon law. So, yes, while we all have the ability, we all must also have the humility. Okay, so ability, responsibility, um, uh, um, uh, ability, responsibility, accountability, and may I add one more now, humility. Okay, so Jesus clearly was walking to Jerusalem. We know this, and while he's walking to his crucifixion, and while he's walking, he's talking, he's teaching, and he teaches this call today to faithful discipleship. Now let's tackle the text. Verse 39. But know this, that if the householder had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have left his house to be broken into. Now read verse 39 with yesterday's text, where the oikonomos, or the steward, is also told to be ready. Remember, gird your loins, keep your lamps alight, because of the persecution was so real, and God, the presence of Jesus. It was not so much about the parousia or the second coming, but the constant awareness that there would be strife within the church. So today Jesus says, if the householder had known at what time the thief would come, he would have been ready. Now, thieves and warnings do not go together. Yeah, I'm a person who doesn't like surprises. Yeah, but the thief always surprises. Tragedy does not send us a notice. Hey, I'm going to visit you at 6 p.m. on a Thursday evening. Therefore, we are always called to be ready. We speak of, there are several words that we use in the English language. We speak of which reflects that tragedy, that all these kind of challenges come, uh, like they speak of disaster striking. We speak of a bolt from the blue. We speak of the thief in the night, as Jesus does. There is no advance warning when these things happen. Bad news is the only kind that really can't wait to be assigned, or that asks for an appointment. Bad news visits us at will. And therefore, says Jesus, not because it's bad news, but because you're not always going to be given a warning just before tragedy strikes. You are on notice, says Jesus. You have been warned, you have been informed, rather. Yeah, I don't like to see these texts as a warning, but as an information. Jesus says, I have informed you that I'm coming. I have not told you what time I'm coming, because that is irrelevant. I would like you to be ready. Therefore, the need to be constantly vigilant. Verse 40, you also must be ready. Just as any man who guards his house and constantly is ready, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour. As I said, this is information. Don't read it very, as we often do in the season of Advent, in a very narrow sense as a warning. Yeah, we receive this message very often, as I said, with dread, as a warning. Rather, see it as an invitation, as I said yesterday, an invitation to rejoice eagerly with Jesus when he comes. I think too often in our preaching, we have only portrayed this as a warning, but not as a matter of rejoicing. Jesus is coming. If I were to tell you your son is coming from America somewhere this month in October, you would be super excited. You'd be happy. You'd be anticipating. You wouldn't say, "Oh, what time is he coming? What if he comes when I'm at the bazaar?" No, that's not the kind of attitude. What fills your heart is that warmth that you are going to encounter your son or daughter who's coming from wherever they're coming. Now, the dread, why do people dread this text? You must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour. Why do people dread this text? Because there is a clear knowledge that our lives are not lived in conformity with Christ, that we are living in a state of sin, and that's why we are frightened. Because if Jesus should make a demand of our soul right now, and I know I'm living an adulterous life, then I'm going to go to hell. And that's the dread. See, but if you were living in a constant state of grace, of happiness, of joy, then you'd say, Lord, come whenever you want. I'm ready for you. In fact, I'm waiting for you. I'm anticipating this visit of us. So death is seen by many as a rupture of life. Death is not a rupture of life. Rather, we go to meet the one who has the riches of life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Death is not a rupture. Verse 41. Now, Peter, listening to this, says, Peter, remember, is the patron of spontaneous prayer. Lord, are you telling this parable for us or for all? Yeah, who is this for now? And Jesus will answer this in verse 48. The answer is for all. For Christians, for non-Christians, you'll say, Father, that's not fair. I'll explain. It is for all. Yeah, because values are for all, truth is for all, goodness is for all. Yeah, goodness and truth and values are not this specialization only of the Christian faith. Everyone is called to live a good, a moral life, a good life that doesn't. This is the reason why natural law is across every religion. Thou shalt not kill is natural law. You can't change natural law. Yeah, therefore abortion is wrong. Please understand where it comes from. There is no religion in its right mind that says you can kill. There is no religion that says abortion is right. Show me a religion, a faith in God, not a faith in yourself. And because we don't understand this, we start this awful narration of I'm pro-choice, not pro-life. When you are pro-life, then you have to also accept your aged parents humbly and treat them with life, not like they are, little pieces of furniture in the house that you move around from time to time. I was so glad on this pilgrimage when I was talking to some, and they were elderly people, and they were speaking of, I presume, even more elderly parents, of how they have to be tended. I always think of Regina from, I think she's from Marol, who always looks after her mother with great love, she herself being a nurse. But I was impacted on my pilgrimage to the Holy Land when she was constantly in touch with her mother. What great love when we treat our aged parents with respect, with love, not like pieces of furniture. Life must be, as Pope Francis said, Pope Benedict, Pope John Paul II, Pope Leo, must be seen in its totality. The preservation of life. We can't have a skewered mind and only say, no, we cannot kill the child in the womb. And then quite recently, Cardinal Muller from Germany said, you cannot equate, the life of an immigrant, if I'm not mistaken, and the life in the womb on the same level. No, my dear Cardinal, you are wrong, and the Holy Father is right. Yeah, you are wrong, my dear Holy Father, my dear Cardinal. Life in all the popes have said this, that you cannot have a skewed vision or a skewed approach of what you think is life and what is not life. So, the Lord said in verse 48, who then is the faithful and wise steward whom his master will set over his household to give them their portion of food at the proper time. This is why I think it is also, this text is also addressed specially to the Christian leaders, yeah, because we as priests, as bishops, the principal role of a bishop is to teach. His principal role is that of a teacher, not slashing ribbons and attending inaugurations, to give their portion of spiritual food at its proper time. Yes, we may need fun fetes in our parish, but that is not spiritual food. In fact, very often it may be a distraction from what we ought to be saying is spiritual food, which very often is the hard truth about the faith. So the task is to look after both the house and those who live in it. Both. To keep the house healthy, both administration as well as mission. And I've often said this, today the mission of the church is being subverted for the administration of the goods of the church. So Jesus is very clear. The faithful and the wise steward, whom the master sets over his household, gives that food to the Christians at their proper time. Blessed, says verse 43, blessed is that servant whom his master, when he comes, will find so doing. He is blessed. He's not lucky. Jesus doesn't say lucky is that steward. Yeah. Why? Blessed, not because you are at the right place at the right time. That would be luck. And we as Christians are not lucky, we are blessed. I remember writing an article of a young Muslim girl who, when I said to her, "How are you today?" and she said, "I'm blessed." And I thought, wow, yeah, I'm blessed. Can we say that when somebody asks us, "How are you?" rather than say, "I'm fine," to have the inner spirituality to say, "I am blessed." There's a lovely line, "I'm too blessed to be stressed." I know that's a mantra for a lot of people, but live it, say it, "I'm too blessed." So blessed not because you're at the right time at the right place, but because he's blessed because he was faithful, because he was prudent. He was not lucky to be at the right time and the right place. He was at it. He was prudent, he was faithful, therefore he is blessed. Blessed is that servant is one more beatitude. Yeah, we have blessed are the merciful, blessed are the meek, blessed are the poor. One more beatitude that Jesus adds as he walks along the way to Jerusalem. Blessed is that servant who is faithful, who is prudent. Verse 44, truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. Jesus doesn't say the blessed leader of the church, as I keep saying, you wonder why I say it, but gets a Mercedes car. No. What is the job that you get for being blessed? Jesus gives you more work. You'll now be set over all his possessions. Now, yesterday the faithful servant was rewarded with a place at the messianic banquet. Remember, the faithful servant sits at the messianic banquet and the master serves him. Today, the faithful manager will be set over all his possessions. Yesterday, the faithful servant was seated and Jesus served him. Today, the faithful manager is set over all the possessions. So clearly, God expects us to act. God expects us to work. God expects us to evangelize when he is away. Remember, when he, at the ascension, he went up to heaven and he left the church for us. He is away. So he expects us to act. He expects us to work. Who? You and me. Not only me. I'm doing my job right now. Yeah, I'm doing my job. The question is, what are you doing? Because Jesus is going to ask you whether you're a steward or a manager, what are you doing? Yesterday he said, you'll get a good beating if you don't do his work. He said in today's text. So the church is not given to some. And when I say some, I mean the hierarchy, the business of the church. In fact, sometimes we as priests have given the impression that we are in charge of the church. We are in charge of nothing. God, out of his grace, called us to be his priests. He is, out of his grace, has put us in charge of caring for the for the sheep, not bossing over the sheep, not I've seen parish priests who are rude, who are unkind, and maybe at one time as a young priest I was unkind. Please forgive me if I was that kind of priest, but I see it today and I cringe. You know, in Goa, when I went to meet my local parish priest, he was yelling at us in my collar because we did not take his permission to set up a home which has nothing to do with the church. And after informing the local bishop and having the blessings of the local bishop, but his point was, you did not tell me. This is power that is corrupting power. Now, I'm not going to tell you who it is, but have we had these experiences? The answer is yes. Do these things happen? The answer is yes. Is it a tragedy that it happens in the church? The answer is yes. But do you also act in this high and mighty, powerful way in your own family, where you say, I am the head of the family? So we've got to watch ourselves, everybody. So clearly, Jesus says to them, truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. So today, the faithful manager will be set over all Christ's possessions if he's faithful. God, as I said, expects us therefore to act. He expects us to work. He expects us to evangelize. And the church is not given to some. So what is given, what is entrusted, because there are two words that we're going to see. Some are given, some are entrusted. What is either given or entrusted is not ours to keep, but to be used wisely for the kingdom of God. So ask yourself today, am I a wise or a faithful servant? Verse 45. But if that servant says to himself, my master is delayed in coming, and he begins to beat the men servants and the maid servants, and to eat and drink and to get drunk, the master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour that he does not know, and he will punish him and put him with the unfaithful. And that servant who knew his master's will, but did not make ready or act according to his will, shall surely receive a beating. Three verses, 45, 46, 47. Let's take it together. We are introduced in verse 45 now to the unjust, to the foolish steward, or the unjust and the foolish manager. We are now introduced to him in these verses. So we may not be cruel like this evil steward who went around beating his manservants and maidservants. We may not be cruel, but we are very often indifferent to our church, and that is cruelty to our calling. We are indifferent. Some work, very well in the church only when the bishop is supervising. Some in our parishes work very well only when the parish priest is around. Jesus is always present. Your bishop may not be around you, your parish priest may not be around you, but Jesus is watching. And he expects you to not say, my master is delayed in coming, so I can do whatever I want. Verse 47. That servant who knew his master's will. Do you know your master's will? That's number one. Don't say you don't. But you know the master's will, but did not make ready or act according to his will receive a severe beating. I think Christians often aim for passing grade and then expect heaven. You can't aim for, which human being aims for a passing grade and then expects to be the CEO of a company? How ridiculous is it? But with our faith, this is what we are aiming for. Verse 48 is a very interesting verse, and we end with it and a few reflections, closing remarks. But he who did not know and did what deserved a beating. Now watch, there are those who did not know and did what deserved a beating shall receive a light beating. So you'll say, Lord, that's not fair. There are some who never knew. There is a difference between the word nescient and ignorant. Let me explain nescient. Nescient is someone not knowing or aware of the truth at all, not knowing anything. That's nescient. Ignorance is quite different. Ignorance is what things you ought to know. When you say he is ignorant of this, he ought to have known it. He doesn't know it. He ought to have known it. You had the opportunity to learn it, but you passed it up. Ignorance is not bliss. When you reach the pearly gates, you can't tell the Lord, I did not know. Is there a Bible class in your parish? Yes. Is there Father Warner teaching you? Yes. Are there hundreds of teachers on the internet? Yes. How can you say you're ignorant? You can't say. And ignorance does not give you a free pass in heaven. Now, a Hindu who has never heard of Jesus Christ, which is impossible, but assuming somebody has never heard of the Lord, that is a different situation. But most of us have heard of Jesus Christ. And as a Christian, we have chosen to pass over the study of the faith. I know many of you watch with fidelity till the end. It's a long teaching. Some of you cut off right at the beginning. But hey, you cannot tell the Lord that, Jesus, I did not know. So this verse reminds us that some are given and also some are entrusted. See, everyone to whom much is given, some are given, of him will be required much, and him who men entrust much will be demanded the more, or the word is commit in some texts. So some are given and some are entrusted or committed. From those given, that is Christians, by virtue of their baptism, much is required. So of you, my dear brothers and sisters, much is required. But those that are entrusted, people like me, ministerial priesthood, much is demanded. So don't think you get a free pass. You'll also get a beating and I'll get a bigger beating. That's what Jesus says. So no free lunches for a Christian. Yeah? No free lunches. We must fulfill our role of prophet, priest, and king that we get at the time of baptism. There is no room for armchair uh, uh, Christians. There is no room, even if I dare say, for Sunday Christians who come, who tick. I finish my mass and I flee home like as if at the end of the mass the priest declared a plague in the parish. I have nothing to do with my church. I have no contribution to the faith. Sorry, you're going to get a good beating. You know, when you look at verse 32 of where we did the faithful steward, and now when we look at verse 42 of the faithful manager, we realize that God gives responsibility to everyone according to their ability, and in the same way demands accountability. Yeah? Ability, responsibility, accountability. I began with that. I'm going to make a few closing remarks. First, some of us look at accountability with dread. Accountability should not be looked at with dread. It should inspire us to live purposefully. I'm accountable, therefore I live purposefully. Not I'm accountable, I hope God will have mercy on me. If you live purposefully, fully, with great joy, with the life that Jesus came to give and life in abundance, accountability will be the day when you're called to accountability, will be the happiest day of your life. That's the day you die. You're called to accountability. You know, you and I have unique gifts. I never even knew I had the gift of speaking. I was a shy child. I told you very often, I'm an introvert. I was a very shy child. I was a bullied child. I never knew I had the gift of even teaching. But we have unique gifts. You have unique gifts. How can you tell Jesus on the day of accountability, I never used it? And there's no one who can say, I have nothing to offer the Lord. No one. If you're good at cooking, cook for the poor. Feed the poor tasty dal and rice. But do not say, I have no ability. So, there is a time to be better informed, and there is a time when God calls us to be better formed, and that time is now. You know, Christians are called to live every moment of their life with purpose, with intent, not aimless lives. We have to align our will, our lives to the will of God. And I want to end with this, and I want to give you strength with this. Understand who you work for. You work for the King of all kings. You work for the greatest kingdom on earth as well as the one in heaven. You and I have royal duties by appointment of His Majesty, the King of all kings. The King of England gives appointments. He says, these are biscuits by appointment of the royal king. We have our royal seal given. You and I work for the King of all kings, not the King of England. the King of all kings, the Lord of all lords, for the greatest kingdom. We have been given ability, we have responsibility, and don't forget accountability. May God bless you, the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Keep well. Pray for me. And don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so. Leave your thoughts and your comments. Also, please, from time to time, many of you write to me, and I really don't know who you are and from where you are. So whenever you write your comments, please tell me which country you are from, which city you are from. So I begin to get, I see Claudette every day, I see Linda every day, I see many of you write every day. I can't get the other names, it's on the tip of my head. Kishore every day. But I don't know who you are and where you are from. So always leave a little note to tell me where you are from. God bless you. Keep well.